Welcome to another episode of Going Homesteading. I'm really glad that you're here, and to tell you the truth, I'm really glad that we're here. I'm not sure when the last time we actually filmed outside. There's some challenges to filming outside. We want to make sure that we have the right sound level and that you can hear us. But there's also opportunities outside. I'm as beautiful as it is inside. I want you to see how beautiful it is outside. Dear, if you would just give a quick pan around what it is we get to see out here. You can see the clouds. They're just stunning, and the field. It's hard to tell all the work that we've done. The grass is starting to come in nearby the cabin. And as I've been promising, we're going to do an episode in which we give a little bit of a closer look at the progress that we've made. There's Lisa showing you some of our fruit trees that are out there. Uh, I had to spray those the other day to protect them, but it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful place. And not only is it a beautiful day to look at, it's also a beautiful day to listen to. I mentioned I want to make sure you can hear us okay, but I also want you to be able, I don't know if you can, I want you to be able to hear the birds that we get to hear. I can't begin to tell you how peaceful and soothing it is, how Edenic it is. Well, I think that goes along well with the theme that I'd like for us to cover on this particular episode. And that's going to have us looking at a particular text in the Bible, in the book of Romans, chapter 12. If you've been listening at all or watching or attending our Monday night Bible study, we meet every Monday. And we've been going to at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and we show this at RC-Lisa Sproul on Facebook Live, so you can tune in. And then I try to post it afterwards at rcsprolljr.com if you want to watch it after the fact, or you can still watch it after the fact if you scroll down our feed at RC-Lisa on Facebook. Okay, so that what we're doing right there, we're going through the book of Romans, and I have been belaboring the fact that there's a profound shift in the book of Romans, not a change of doctrine, but a change of focus, where Paul goes from teaching heavy, deep doctrine that's very difficult, the kind of stuff that Peter comments about how Paul can be tough to understand, into some very practical implications of what comes from what he's taught. And he's been speaking specifically about the sovereignty of God. And when we get to Romans 12, as we've made that turn into the practical, we come to verse 17, where Paul says, repay no one evil for evil, have regard for good things in the sight of all men. Then verse 18, where I'd really like us to focus, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Now, if you have been with us on the program from the beginning, then you'll remember that I've spent a lot of time, and I do in general spend a lot of time trying to encourage people to not lose sight of the context in which we live our lives. That we are living between Genesis 3:15 and the consummation of the kingdom when Jesus returns at the end of the age. And in between that, those two poles, there is only warfare and battle. God said to the serpent after the fall, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. You will bruise his heel, and he will crush your head. That's the context of our lives. And there's a shameful acquiescence that we tend to have with the world in rebellion against God. We're at ease in Babylon. We live at peace in Vanity Fair, and we ought not to. And that's why, again, I spent a lot of time saying, hey, we need to be on guard. We need to be pressing the crown rights of King Jesus over all things. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But what it's easy to forget is that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. And that, in fact, I would argue that one of the most effective ways we can wage war against the powers and principalities is by living in peace. Paul hasn't stopped affirming the reality of the word. In fact, it's earlier on in this same chapter, Romans 12, verse 2, where we're called to renew our minds and not to be conformed to this world. So there's a call for waging the warfare, for being separate, for being distinct, and yet here, as much as possible, live in peace and quietness with all men. That's one of the blessings of homesteading. It's interesting, I think, that Paul, I believe it's in Thessalonians, Paul has his admonition to the people there that they be busy with work, that they work with their hands. And he connects the failure to be busy with a destructive impact of gossip. You know, when a man is out working in his fields, he's being fruitful, he's being productive, he has time to think through things, and he's not tearing up the unity of God's people. He's not spreading gossip and slander. He is living in peace and quietness with all men. When I'm mowing my yard, I'm not offending or upsetting anybody. I'm not doing harm to anybody. And in fact, what I'm doing is actually bringing blessing because I'm helping people to have this unbelievable view, which we're more than happy to share. So, living in peace and quietness is a reference really first to our relationship with God. When we recognize his sovereignty, when we recognize that we are beloved of him, adopted by him, and that nothing can ever change this, then we have peace in our hearts. When we realize that we are seated with Christ in the heavenly places, we have nothing to fear from what can happen in the here and now, including getting stung by a bee. It is a mason bee. They don't sting, so I'm not worried. Actually, I am worried. I'm trying to live in peace and quietness with all bees, as much as it depends upon me. Anyway, uh, this is, as we've been saying from the beginning, peace and quietness is a central part of what we're aspiring to, what we're trying to grow here, what we're trying to live in here, and what we're trying to encourage others toward, even on the even on the uh, going home steady program. So I want to encourage you to seek out that peace. In fact, as always, let's remember that we're also supposed to be talking. We're supposed to be having a conversation peacefully, gently, a conversation, and we would just love to hear from you. What are some of the habits that you do when you are seeking out peace? This is really the peace spot, at least when it's not bee season, it's the peace spot. When bee season, maybe inside's the peace spot. But this is the place where we come, where we rest, where we recover, where we're at ease, where our spirits are soothed. And I love it. Do you have a place like that? Do you have rituals like that? I mean, I've told Lisa many times, and we're still figuring this out, how to manage this much land with respect to cutting the grass. We've made use of so much of it, which is wonderful. And we've got the fruit trees out there. We've got the place where we're going to have the animals kept out there. All of this stuff is good, but we still got acres and acres and acres and acres of grass to cut. And I told Lisa, you know what? I like cutting the grass until something breaks. That's when it gets hard. That's when it gets frustrating, when the machines don't work right. But even that is a time of peace for me. The hum of the machine, the seeing of the progress and the swaths that are made. Uh, so we want even to have peace and quietness in the midst of the work that we're doing. Whether we're digging a hole to put a tree in, whether we're pulling weeds, whether we're cutting grass, whether we're collecting eggs, it's not just when you're eating the fruit of your harvest, but peace comes in doing our work as unto the Lord. And so we're so grateful to have this place. We're so grateful to be learning these things. We're so grateful to be sharing with you and to be learning from others along the way. And it's just a blessing. It's just a blessing. And we want all of God's people to be able to be in peace and quietness. If you don't have this, and again, I'm not saying that we don't have hardships that come our way, and I'm not trying to impose on anybody a stiff upper lip or a stoicness or a denial of hardship. What I am trying to do is to remember that in the context of hardships, even interpersonal hardships, we're called to a posture of peace. In fact, the verse goes on in verse 19. Paul says, "Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." Isn't so much of our uneasiness or our lack of peace, particularly in our interpersonal relationship, isn't it grounded in a fear that unless we do something, justice will not come to pass? And yet God himself here says, do not seek vengeance, not because vengeance is a bad thing, but because vengeance is a God thing. It's his. It's his prerogative. It is his power. And again, he calls his children to trust in him. Think of it this way. Suppose you have a child, a 5-year-old child, and some adult starts bullying your 5-year-old child. Do you want your 5-year-old child to go and weigh in on this? Or do you want your 5-year-old child to come to you and tell you what's happened? And to have a perspective of peace and trust in you that you would take care of this. And you would certainly want to take care of it. You would say to your child, don't go in and try and take care of this. You take it easy. I will take care of this. Well, that's how our Heavenly Father looks at us and the hardships that we face. That's why he calls us not to seek vengeance. That's why he calls us to live in peace and quietness with all men as much as it depends on you. That qualifier is important. And by the way, when he says that which depends upon you, he's not saying until you lose your cool. He's saying don't lose your cool. It's always, it's everywhere. Don't lose your cool. Leave room. But there may be times, there may be contexts, maybe when you're protecting others under your care, where yes, you're called to step up. There are times when you're called to be prophetic to the watching world, to be bold, to be strong, to not be afraid, as God told Joshua as he's going out to conquer the promised land. There's balance here, there's wisdom here, and we're called to maybe look at ourselves and see which way are we more prone to go in a given moment, and then say, well, maybe I need to adjust, maybe I need to be more on guard. I tend to be, in many ways, a conflict avoider. And so this goes right up my alley. But I have to remember as well that there are hardships out there, and I have a calling to be at work to protect those under my care and to manifest the reign of Christ over all things. Well, we've made it this far without anybody getting stung, and I think we're going to make it the rest of the way. But while these bees are in their holes, let me remind you one more time the normal stuff and ask you once again, would you please go and like this? I'm over here.
There's been a couple.
Yeah, there have been a couple of those. Quiet on the set. Would you please go and like this particular episode? As I mentioned earlier, I'd love to hear your comments, what your rituals are, what your places are, where and how you find peace, how you remind yourself of this call to peace. So yeah, comments are wonderful. We'd love for you to share this. Go on your social media, say, hey, I've enjoyed these Going Homesteading videos. Check it out. So if you would share with your friends, that would be a great blessing to us and help us to grow our audience as we seek to serve God's people. And we hope that we'll see you again. I think it'll be the next one where we're actually going to look at the work that we've done while we've been away from the video. And hopefully we can get that done also without getting stung.
Right.
Also, check out the last episode or go to rcsprolljr.com or to at rcsprolljr and learn all about our cash crop here at our farm, which is the purpose-driven write. That work that I do in helping, coaching, editing, co-writing, ghostwriting, etc. For folks who want to get their story out, I can be a help to you. Thanks so much for tuning in.